Single dad spent his last $10 helping steal Rose's biker. Next day, 200 women bikers brought a life-changing gift. Don't get involved with those people. You don't know what you're dealing with. The warning echoed in Anthony Miller's mind as he knelt beside the massive woman collapsed on the cold concrete. The steel Rose's patches on the leather vest should have sent him running. Everyone else had. But the woman's lips were turning blue, her chest barely moving, and Anthony couldn't walk away. Not again. Not like when his father had died alone in a parking lot just like this one, 17 years ago. Hey, can you hear me? Anthony's hands trembled as he checked for a pulse. The woman's eyes rolled back, unfocused, desperate. A wheeze escaped her lips, the sound of death approaching. I wouldn't touch her if I were you. A woman 20 feet away called out from her car, her window barely cracked. Those bikers are nothing but trouble. Probably overdosed on something. Let her own kind deal with it. An older man walking out of the station joined in. Son, you don't want that kind of attention. Trust me, I've seen what these women do to people who cross them. Anthony's jaw tightened. The leather, the patches, the tattoos. Everyone saw a threat, but all Anthony saw was a human being dying. A human being who reminded him of his father's final moments gasping for air in a Walmart parking lot while shoppers walked past, too busy or too scared to stop. She's not on drugs, Anthony said firmly. Look at her chest. She's clutching it. Her lips are blue. This is cardiac arrest, not your problem. The woman insisted, already starting her engine. Some people aren't worth saving. The October wind cut through Anthony's thin jacket as he pulled out his phone. His fingers moved across the cracked screen, the screen he couldn't afford to fix, dialing 911. As he waited for the dispatcher, his mind flickered to his wallet. $10. That's all he had until Friday's paycheck. $10 to feed his 7-year-old twins breakfast and lunch tomorrow. He'd already been watering down their milk, telling them the electricity was out for fun when it had been shut off for 2 days last month, making games out of eating butter sandwiches for dinner. 911. What's your emergency? There's a woman having what looks like a heart attack. Shell station on Riverside Avenue. She's conscious but barely breathing. Her lips are blue. Please hurry. Help is on the way. Stay with her. Is she responsive? Anthony looked down at the woman. Ma'am, can you hear me? The biker's eyes fluttered, trying to focus. A massive hand reached out, grabbing Anthony's sleeve with desperate strength. Help is coming, Anthony assured her. Just hold on, the dispatcher continued. Can you get her to chew aspirin if she's conscious? It could save her life. I'll try. Anthony looked at the dying woman again. The vest said Steel Roses MC, but the faded military tattoos on her arms told another story. Iraq, Purple Heart, POW, MIA. This woman had served her country. She'd survived a war only to die in a gas station parking lot. I'll be right back, Anthony told her, squeezing her shoulder. I'm not leaving you. Just hold on, soldier. Something flickered in the woman's eyes at that word. Soldier. The convenience store's fluorescent lights felt harsh after the darkness outside. The clerk, barely out of his teens, looked nervous when Anthony explained. There's a woman dying out there. I need water and aspirin now. Anthony grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler. His hand hesitated over the aspirin. $6.99. The water was $2.50. That was $9.49 with tax, his entire $10. Tomorrow was Thursday. Jillian's asthma inhaler needed refilling. She'd been wheezing more lately with the weather change. John's shoes were literally held together with duct tape, and kids had been making fun of him. The twins had eaten cereal for dinner twice this week already, and there was maybe 1 bowl's worth of milk left. But outside, a woman was dying. Anthony slapped the $10 bill on the counter and ran out without waiting for the receipt. Back outside, the woman had slumped further. Anthony dropped to his knees, helping her sit up against the wall. Her weight nearly knocked Anthony over. She had to be 250 pounds of muscle slowly failing. Chew these, Anthony pressed 3 aspirin into her shaking hand. Don't swallow them whole. Chew them. It could save your life if this is your heart. The biker's eyes focused on him for the first time. Gray eyes, intelligent despite the pain. Distinguished features under the graying beard. This wasn't some young thug. This was someone's mother, someone's grandmother maybe. Why? She wheezed out the word, barely audible. Because you need help, Anthony said, helping her with the water bottle when her hands shook too much to hold it. No. Why you? Why help me? Anthony thought of his twins asleep in their beds, trusting their father would always provide. He thought of the empty fridge, the overdue bills, the check engine light that had been on for 6 months, the electricity bill that was 60 days overdue, the eviction notice he'd hidden in his drawer. He thought of his father dying alone at 42 because everyone was too afraid or too busy to stop because everyone saw a Hispanic man in work clothes and assumed he was drunk or high instead of dying. My dad died like this, Anthony said quietly, keeping his hand on her shoulder. Heart attack in a parking lot. Everyone walked past him. By the time someone called 911, it was too late. I was 15. Had to raise my little sister alone after that. I know what it's like to lose someone who didn't have to die. The woman's hand gripped Anthony's wrist with surprising strength. Through labored breaths, she managed Rachel Patterson. Anthony Miller. You're going to be okay, Rachel. The ambulance is coming. You've got to fight. Someone's waiting for you to come home, right? Rachel nodded weakly, her hand moving to her chest pocket. A photo fell out, a woman and two young adults in graduation caps. Your kids? Anthony asked, picking up the photo carefully. Rachel nodded again, tears forming in her eyes. Then you fight, Anthony said firmly. You fight for them. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes that felt like hours. The paramedics worked with practiced efficiency, oxygen mask lines monitors beeping. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, looked at Anthony with approval. You gave her aspirin? 3. Made her chew them. You might have just saved her life. That can make all the difference with cardiac events. Are you family? No, I found her. The paramedic looked at the steel roses vest, then at Anthony in his worn warehouse uniform. Most people would have walked away. Most people are wrong, Anthony said simply. As they loaded Rachel onto the stretcher, she grabbed Anthony's wrist one more time. Through the oxygen mask, she pulled Anthony close. Won't forget this. Promise. Anthony squeezed her hand. Just survive. That's all you need to do. The sirens faded into the distance. Anthony stood in the empty parking lot, his wallet empty except for 22 cents in change that rattled mockingly in his pocket. The woman who'd warned him drove past, shaking her head like he was a fool. Maybe he was. The drive home in his 2008 Honda Civic felt longer than usual. The crack in the passenger window whistled, letting in the cold October air. The gas gauge hovered just above E. He'd been coasting on fumes for 2 days, putting in $2 here, $3 there. Tomorrow morning, he'd have to look his kids in the eyes and pretend everything was fine. Make a game out of eating plain toast if they still had bread. Tell them cereal was a special breakfast treat, even though there was barely enough milk for one bowl. His construction job had ended 2 months ago when the contractor went bankrupt, still owing him 2 weeks' pay he'd never see. The warehouse job he'd found paid $13 an hour, 40 hours a week of breaking his back. And still, he could barely keep the lights on. Literally, they'd been shut off twice this year already. The apartment building's hallway light was out again, leaving him to navigate by memory. 3rd step creaked. 5th step was loose. Don't touch the railing on the 7th. It wobbled. Inside the apartment was silent, except for the constant drip from the bathroom faucet he couldn't fix because the landlord wouldn't provide parts. Anthony checked on the twins. John sprawled across the top bunk, one arm hanging over the edge, his math book still open beside him. He'd been struggling with fractions, and Anthony had spent an hour after dinner helping him, even though he was exhausted from his shift. Jillian curled up on the bottom bunk, hugging the stuffed elephant she'd had since she was 3. The one her mother had given her before she left. Her breathing was slightly wheezy. The inhaler on her nightstand was nearly empty. Their backpacks sat ready by the door. Homework complete despite the wobbly kitchen table that served as their desk dining room and Anthony's office where he paid bills. Or tried to. Good kids. They never complained. Even when they knew other kids had more. They deserved better than this. They deserved a father who could provide more than survival. Anthony sat at that wobbly table, his head in his hands. Their mother had left when the twins were 3, unable to handle the pressure of raising them on nothing. I can't do this anymore, Anthony. I'm drowning. We're all drowning. She'd been right. They were drowning. But Anthony couldn't leave. These were his kids, his responsibility, his everything. She sent cards on their birthdays, sometimes with a $20 bill, that the kids would immediately want to spend on toys, not knowing that their father would quietly use it for groceries instead. Tomorrow would be another mountain to climb, pack lunches with whatever he could find. Probably the last of the peanut butter no jelly. Drop them at school hoping the car made it. Work his shift lifting boxes that seemed to get heavier every day. Pick them up from the after-school program. He couldn't afford dodging the director's disappointed looks. Come home, make dinner from nothing, help with homework, read a bedtime story, pretend everything was fine. Always pretend everything was fine. We're okay, right, Dad? John had asked last week. We're perfect, buddy. We've got each other. But something felt different as he sat there in the darkness. Rachel Patterson's eyes haunted him. That grip on his wrist. Won't forget this. Promise. What did that mean from a dying woman? Probably nothing. People said things when they were scared. Still, Anthony had done the right thing. His father would have been proud. That had to be enough. Morning came too quickly. Anthony woke before his alarm, his back stiff from the thin mattress on the pull-out couch that served as his bed. He stared at the ceiling, calculating. 22 cents. Maybe there was change in the couch cushions. Maybe he could find something to pawn. Maybe Dad John stood in the doorway, hair sticking up in all directions, eyes still heavy with sleep. Are we having breakfast? Anthony sat up, forcing a smile. Sure are, buddy. How about some cinnamon toast he'd found half a loaf in the freezer last night, and they still had sugar. A sprinkle of sugar and cinnamon could make plain toast seem special. Can we have milk too? The question felt like a knife. Anthony glanced at the refrigerator. The small carton held maybe a quarter cup of milk, enough for one bowl, maybe two if he watered it down. I was thinking we'd save the milk for your cereal tomorrow. Special Friday breakfast, right? John nodded, disappointed but understanding beyond his years. Jillian joined them, already dressed in her favorite purple shirt, faded now from too many washings. Her dark hair was pulled back in a crooked ponytail she'd done herself. Morning, Daddy. She climbed onto his lap and he felt her ribcage expand with effort as she breathed. The whistling sound was back. Hey, Princess. How's your breathing today? Jillian shrugged. Okay. Can I take my elephant to school today? I told Mrs. Wilson about him. Anthony swallowed hard. School policy was no toys, but sometimes her teacher made exceptions for Jillian. Let's ask when we get there. Okay, Jillian nodded, then started coughing, a deep hack that shook her small frame. Anthony reached for her inhaler, helping her take a puff. There was barely anything left in it. Refill day was Friday, but he needed the copay $35 he didn't have. While the twins ate their toast, Anthony rummaged through the apartment, searching couch cushions, old coat pockets, anywhere that might yield loose change. He found 67 cents, bringing his total to 89. Not enough for anything. Not enough to matter. John watched him, understanding in his eyes. Did you lose something, Dad? We can help you look. Anthony straightened, embarrassed to be caught searching for pennies. Just looking for my work badge. Found it. The lie came easily now. One of dozens of small untruths designed to shield his children from the reality of their situation. The morning routine continued with practiced efficiency. Teeth brushed with the last bit of toothpaste squeezed flat, faces washed, hair combed. Anthony helped John put more duct tape on his left shoe where the sole was separating from the upper. Hey, it's silver tape today. Much cooler than the black we used last time, right? John tried to smile, but Anthony saw the shame in his eyes. The other kids had been teasing him about his shoes. One boy had called him tape shoes in the cafeteria, and now others had picked it up. Anthony had promised new shoes next month, but next month was always filled with other emergencies. Do I have to go today? John asked quietly, as Anthony packed their lunches, a single peanut butter sandwich, cut in half an apple divided between them, tap water in refillable bottles. Yes, buddy. Education is our ticket out of here. You know that. But Tyler says I'm poor trash, and that you're just a... John stopped, unable to repeat whatever cruel thing had been said about his father. Anthony knelt, looking his son in the eye. We may not have much, but we have dignity, brains, and each other. That Tyler kid, he's got expensive shoes but a cheap heart. Which would you rather have, an expensive heart? John answered solemnly, misunderstanding, but somehow getting it exactly right. Anthony hugged him tight, fighting back tears. That's my boy. The Civic barely started, the engine coughing several times before catching. The check engine light glowed orange on the dashboard, a constant companion for 6 months now. The gas gauge showed less than 1/8 of a tank, but it would have to do. The school was only 4 miles away, and the warehouse another 3 beyond that. If he coasted downhill and didn't use the AC, he could make it through the day. Ms. Parker's waiting for us. Jillian bounced in her seat as they pulled up to the elementary school. Her teacher stood by the drop-off lane scanning the arriving cars with obvious concern. When she spotted Jillian, relief washed over her face. "Good morning, Mr. Miller." Ms. Parker leaned down to the car window. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" Anthony checked his watch. He was already cutting it close for his shift, but my son. Parker had been understanding about Jillian's asthma, sometimes even purchasing supplies for her classroom out of her own pocket when the school budget fell short. "Sure," kids head in. "Okay, I'll see you at pickup. Love you, Dad." They called in unison, dashing toward the building, backpacks bouncing. Ms. Parker's expression turned serious once the children were out of earshot. "Mr. Miller, I'm concerned about Jillian's breathing. The school nurse checked her yesterday during PE, and her oxygen levels were lower than they should be. Has she seen her doctor recently?" Anthony's stomach nodded. The insurance from his warehouse job was bare bones at best. The copay for a specialist visit was $80, and the pulmonologist had wanted additional tests that would cost hundreds more. "We have an appointment next month. Her prescription refills tomorrow." Ms. Parker nodded, unconvinced. "And John, I notice his shoes are—" The sentence hung unfinished, her eyes sympathetic but concerned. Anthony felt heat rise in his neck. "We're working on that. Next payday." "I understand." Ms. Parker hesitated. "Mr. Miller, the school has resources, a special fund for families who might need a little help with necessities. Many parents use it, especially single parents. There's no shame in, 'We're fine.'" Anthony cut her off, then immediately regretted his sharpness. "Thank you, Ms. Parker. I appreciate your concern. But we're managing. I just started a new position with better prospects. Things will improve soon." The lie tasted bitter. There was no better position. Just the warehouse, the aching back, the constant fear. But his pride, the one thing he still owned outright, wouldn't let him accept charity from his children's school. Not yet. Not until they were truly desperate. Ms. Parker seemed to sense his discomfort. "Of course. Just know the option is there. Jillian and John are wonderful children. You're doing a remarkable job with them. If there's ever anything I can do, thank you." Anthony managed, then glanced at his watch again. "I should go. Don't want to be late." As he pulled away, Anthony saw Ms. Parker still watching from the curb, concern etched on her face. He felt exposed, as if his poverty were a visible stain spreading across his clothes, marking him as a failure. The warehouse loomed gray and imposing against the morning sky. United Shipping Services, overnight delivery, guaranteed. What wasn't guaranteed was a living wage or enough hours to keep a family afloat. Anthony parked in the back lot alongside other aging vehicles held together with hope and mechanical ingenuity. "Miller, you're cutting it close." Supervisor Jenkins stood by the time clock watching as Anthony hurried inside with less than 2 minutes to spare. His chronically late employee called in sick again. "I need you on Station 4 today." Anthony nodded, already heading for his locker. Station 4 meant the heavy packages, the constant bending and lifting that would leave his back screaming by lunchtime. But it also meant guaranteed hours, and right now hours were all that mattered. The morning passed in a blur of cardboard boxes, packing tape, and shipping labels. Lift, scan, stack. Lift, scan, stack. By noon, Anthony's shirt was soaked with sweat, his hands raw from the cardboard edges. His coworkers moved around him in their own bubbles of exhaustion, each focused on making it through the day, collecting their pay, and returning to whatever waited for them outside these walls. During his lunch break, half a sandwich, saved from the children's lunches, and more tap water, Anthony checked his phone. One missed call from an unknown number. Probably another bill collector. They'd been relentless lately, especially the electric company. The 60-day notice had arrived last week, warning of disconnection if the $147.82 balance wasn't paid by Monday. He had about $60 set aside. The rest would have to come from this week's paycheck, leaving almost nothing for food and Jillian's inhaler. "Miller, you've got a visitor." Jenkins' voice cut through Anthony's calculations. Unusual. No one ever visited him at work. For a moment, wild hope flared. Maybe the construction contractor had finally come through with the owed wages. But as he walked to the front office, dread replaced hope. The only other people who would seek him out were bill collectors or worse, representatives from child services. A massive woman filled the small reception area, 6 feet tall, at least broad-shouldered, with powerful arms exposed by a sleeveless leather vest. Steel Rose's MC patches decorated the back alongside an embroidered skull with roses growing through the eye sockets. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, and when she turned, Anthony recognized the intelligent eyes immediately, though they now burned with purpose rather than pain. My brother, the woman extended a hand the size of a baseball mitt. Name's Tanya, Rachel's sister. I've been looking for you. Anthony's mouth went dry. He couldn't fathom why a Steel Roses biker would track him down, but the possibilities spun dark scenarios in his mind. Had Rachel died? Were they blaming him somehow? He should have acted sooner, called 911 faster, done something more. Relax, brother. Tanya's voice was surprisingly gentle for someone who looked like she could bench press a motorcycle. Ray's fine, thanks to you. Triple bypass surgery this morning. She's stable. Doc said without that aspirin, she'd have been gone before hitting the hospital parking lot. Relief washed over Anthony. That's good. I'm glad she's okay. Tanya studied him, those sharp eyes taking in his worn uniform, the exhaustion etched into his face the way he favored his right side where his back had been spasming all morning. Ray told me what you did, how you stepped up when everyone else stepped back, how you called her soldier, and that kept her fighting. Anthony shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. Anyone would have helped. Tanya's laugh was a harsh bark. That's bullshit and you know it. Ray said there were at least 15 people in that parking lot. All of them decided a Steel Rose wasn't worth saving, except you. Jenkins appeared in the doorway, visibly nervous about the leather-clad giant in his reception area. Everything okay here, Miller? Anthony nodded quickly, hoping to avoid any scene that might jeopardize his job. Tanya turned slowly, fixing Jenkins with a stare that could have melted steel. Your employee here is a hero, sir. Saved my sister's life last night, with his last $10 from what I hear. Jenkins blinked, clearly processing this unexpected information. Well, that's commendable, but we do have a production schedule to maintain. Tanya's smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course. Wouldn't want to interfere with the critical work of... She glanced around, taking in the stacks of packages, moving boxes from one place to another. 5 minutes, that's all I need. Jenkins retreated, muttering about security protocols. Anthony turned back to Tanya, increasingly nervous about where this conversation was heading. Look, I appreciate you coming by, but I need this job. I've got kids, and the cashier at the gas station told me something interesting. Tanya interrupted, her voice casual, but her eyes intent. Young kid scared out of his mind when we showed up asking questions. Said you paid for that water and aspirin with the last cash in your wallet. Said you stared at that $10 bill for a long time before you handed it over. True, Anthony said nothing, shame and pride warring within him. His silence was confirmation enough. Tanya nodded slowly. Thought so. Listen, we're having a gathering tonight. Nothing fancy, just some Steel Roses members who want to thank the man who saved their sister. Here's the address. She handed him a business card, McCrae Construction, with an address in the industrial district. Anthony stared at the card. I appreciate the invitation, but I have my kids, and tonight is homework night, and bring them. Tanya's tone made it clear this wasn't really a request. 6 o'clock. We'll have food. And Anthony, don't make me come looking for you again. Next time I might not be so polite with your boss. She was gone before Anthony could formulate a response, her heavy boots echoing down the hallway. Jenkins reappeared immediately. Friend of yours? Not exactly. Anthony tucked the card into his pocket. Just someone I helped out. Jenkins eyed him suspiciously. Didn't know you ran with that crowd, Miller? Steel Roses are serious business. They practically own the East Side Industrial Zone. I don't run with anyone. I just did what anyone would do. Anthony headed back towards Station 4, hoping to end the conversation before it cost him his job. The rest of the shift crawled by his mind, replaying Tanya's visit. What could the Steel Roses possibly want with him? The rational part of his brain said to ignore the invitation to stay far away from motorcycle clubs and their complex social codes. But another part, the part that remembered Rachel's grip on his wrist, her promise not to forget, was curious. By the time Anthony clocked out at 4:30, curiosity had given way to anxiety. He had exactly $23.14 to his name after scrounging through the apartment that morning. Jillian's inhaler needed refilling tomorrow. The electric bill was due Monday. The rent was already 10 days late. He couldn't afford any complications, any diversions, any unplanned expenses. And a meeting with Steel Roses definitely qualified as a complication. The after-school program coordinator gave Anthony her usual disappointed look when he arrived. "We need to discuss your account, Mr. Miller. You're 3 weeks behind on payments." "I know, Ms. Winters. I get paid Friday. I'll bring it then." Anthony avoided her eyes, focusing instead on locating the twins among the children playing in the school gymnasium. "That's what you said last Friday, and the Friday before. The program has expenses, Mr. Miller. We can't continue to—" Dad Jillian spotted him, her face lighting up as she ran across the gym, John close behind. Anthony scooped them both into a hug, his worries momentarily eclipsed by their unconditional love. Ms. Winters softened slightly. "Friday, Mr. Miller, please. The twins need this program. I don't want to have to turn them away." Anthony nodded, already calculating which bill would have to go unpaid to keep his children in after-school care. It would probably be the electric again. They could manage another few days without power if necessary. He'd tell the twins it was another adventure, another game. "How was school?" Anthony asked as they walked to the car, a child holding each hand. John shrugged, his usual response these days. "Okay, I guess. Ms. Wilson says I'm getting better at fractions." The taped shoe dragged slightly as he walked. "I drew a picture of us," Jillian announced, digging in her backpack with one hand while maintaining her grip on Anthony with the other. "Look." She produced a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures, one tall, 2 small, standing beside what appeared to be their apartment building. All 3 were smiling enormously, the sun shining above them. "Our family," and Anthony swallowed the lump in his throat. "It's beautiful, Princess. We'll put it right on the refrigerator." The drive home was filled with Jillian's chatter and John's occasional contributions. Anthony listened with half an ear, his mind churning over the decision before him. Ignore Tanya's invitation and risk offending the Steel Roses, or accept it and enter a world he knew nothing about. Neither option felt safe. As they neared the apartment, Anthony made his decision. "Hey, how would you two feel about having dinner somewhere else tonight?" John looked up, surprise clear on his face. "Like a restaurant?" "Not exactly. Some people I met, they're having a gathering. There'll be food." Anthony kept his explanation vague, uncertain how to describe the Steel Roses to a 7-year-old. "Is it like a party?" Jillian bounced in her seat, already excited by the prospect of anything outside their usual routine. "Will there be cake?" Anthony smiled despite his anxiety. "I don't know, Princess. Maybe. But listen, these people might look a little different than the people you're used to. They wear leather clothes with special patches. They ride motorcycles, but they're friends of someone I helped." Motorcycles, John's interest was officially piqued. "Real ones, can we ride them?" "Absolutely not." Anthony's response was immediate and firm. "We're just going to say hello, have some dinner, and come home for homework. And you two need to stay right by me the whole time." "Okay. No wandering off." Both children nodded solemnly, though excitement still radiated from them. Any break from routine was cause for celebration in their world. The apartment looked exactly as they'd left it that morning, small, worn but clean and orderly. Anthony insisted on tidiness, partly as a life lesson for the twins, and partly because keeping their few possessions organized made the place feel less desperately poor. At least they weren't living in chaos. "Let's change clothes and freshen up before we go." Anthony helped the twins wash their faces and put on their good outfits, clothes reserved for school events and doctor's appointments. For John, khaki pants with only one small stain on the left knee and a button-up shirt they'd found at the thrift store. For Jillian, a purple dress she'd nearly outgrown. Anthony himself had nothing special to wear, just a slightly cleaner version of his everyday jeans and a flannel shirt with no obvious holes. The address on Tanya's card led them to an industrial complex on the east side of town. McCrae Construction occupied a large warehouse with an attached office building, its logo, a stylized female silhouette holding a hard hat emblazoned on the front. Dozens of motorcycles lined the parking lot, their chrome gleaming in the early evening sun. Anthony parked the Civic as far from the entrance as possible, suddenly conscious of its dented fender and cracked window. As they approached the building, the sound of music and conversation drifted out. John gripped Anthony's hand tighter. Jillian, by contrast, practically skipped beside him, undaunted by the unfamiliar surroundings. At the entrance, Anthony hesitated. This was his last chance to turn around to retreat to the safety of their apartment. But before he could decide, the door swung open. "There you are. We've been waiting." Tanya filled the doorway, her imposing frame now clad in a surprisingly professional outfit, dark jeans, a crisp button-down shirt, and a leather vest that looked more expensive than Anthony's entire wardrobe. Her smile was genuine as she knelt to the twins' level. And these must be the famous John and Jillian. Your dad told my sister all about you. John pressed against Anthony's leg. Jillian, after a moment's assessment, stepped forward. Do you really ride a motorcycle? Her voice was small but determined. Tanya laughed, a warm sound that transformed her intimidating presence. I sure do, darling. Got a Harley-Davidson Softail parked right out front. Purple, too. Your favorite color, I hear. Jillian's eyes widened. How did you know? A little bird told me. Tanya winked, then straightened to her full height. Come on in, Miller family. There are some people very eager to meet you. Anthony stepped through the doorway, a child clutching each hand, and entered a world he could never have imagined. The warehouse had been transformed into something between a community center and a banquet hall. Tables laden with food lined one wall. Children's toys and games occupied a corner, currently swarming with kids of various ages. A projector displayed a football game on one wall with comfortable seating arranged in front of it. But most striking were the people. At least 50 women filled the space, ranging in age from 20s to 70s. All wore some version of the Steel Roses insignia, though their clothing varied from full leather to business attire. Many had visible tattoos, piercings, and scars that hinted at hard lives. But their expressions as they turned toward Anthony and the twins weren't threatening. They were welcoming, even reverent. But Tanya's voice boomed across the room. This is Anthony Miller and his children, John and Jillian. A moment of silence, then applause erupted, thunderous, sustained applause that made Anthony want to disappear into the floor. Jillian pressed against his side, overwhelmed by the attention. John simply stared wide-eyed at the assembly of intimidating women, all focused on his family. Tanya placed a hand on Anthony's shoulder, guiding him further into the room. The crowd parted as they walked, women nodding respectfully, some reaching out to touch his arm or shoulder in passing. Anthony felt like he'd stumbled into a ceremony where he didn't know the protocol but was somehow the guest of honor. They stopped before a table where 3 older women sat. 2 Anthony didn't recognize, but the third, propped up with pillows and looking pale but alert, was unmistakable. Rachel Patterson's eyes lit up when she saw him. Her hospital gown had been replaced with a Steel Roses t-shirt, and an IV still protruded from her arm, but she was undeniably alive, strong, present, the man himself. Rachel's voice was weak but clear. Told you I wouldn't forget. Anthony's throat tightened. You should be in the hospital. This is too much. Rachel laughed, then winced, her hand going to her chest. Doc said I needed to stay in bed. Didn't specify which bed or where. Besides, couldn't miss this. Not every day we get to thank the man who saved the Steel Roses treasurer. Behind him, Anthony was aware of more women entering the warehouse. The space was filling up, energy building, like before a concert or sporting event. John tugged at his hand. Dad, why are all these people looking at us? Before Anthony could answer, a woman approached with 2 other children, a boy about John's age and a slightly older girl. Hey there, I'm Lisa. These are my kids, Marcus and Zoe. They thought you might like to check out the game room while the adults talk. We've got pizza and sodas over there, too. John looked to Anthony for permission, suspicion, warring with the natural desire to play with other children. Anthony hesitated, his protective instincts screaming at him not to let his children out of his sight. But something in Lisa's expression, a mother's understanding, a shared knowledge of what children need, reassured him. It's okay, Dad, Jillian tugged at his hand. I want to see the games. Anthony nodded reluctantly. Okay, but stay where I can see you and come right back if you need anything. Anything at all. The children followed Lisa toward the play area, John still glancing back over his shoulder every few steps. Anthony watched until they were settled, then turned back to Rachel and Tanya. Mr. Miller, a third woman, joined them, extending her hand. Grace Patterson, Rachel's wife. I wanted to thank you personally for what you did. Rachel's voice broke slightly. You gave my grandchildren their grandmother back. Anthony shook her hand, increasingly uncomfortable with the gratitude being heaped upon him. I just did what anyone should have done, but no one else did. Tanya's voice was quiet but intense. That's the point, brother. No one else did. Rachel gestured to the seat beside her. Sit. Please, we need to talk. Anthony sat, feeling the attention of the entire Entire room still focused on him. The weight of it pressed down, making it hard to breathe normally. What could these women possibly want from him? Why go to all this trouble for a simple act of human decency? Rachel studied him for a long moment, those intelligent gray eyes seeing far more than Anthony was comfortable revealing. The cashier told us about the $10, how it was all you had. Anthony looked away, embarrassment and pride creating a knot in his chest. It doesn't matter. It matters to us. Tanya pulled up a chair, her large frame somehow graceful as she sat. It matters because that's who we are, brother. Steel roses take care of their own. But I'm not, Anthony began, only to be cut off by Rachel. You became one of us the moment you knelt beside me instead of walking away. The moment you called me soldier and made me remember who I am, what I've survived. You're family now, and family takes care of family. The words hung in the air between them, both offering and declaration. Anthony looked across the room to where John and Jillian were cautiously interacting with the other children. Already he could see Jillian demonstrating her crayon techniques to a fascinated audience. John was bent over what appeared to be a model motorcycle, his earlier fear forgotten in the face of this new mechanical wonder. For the first time in years, they looked like normal children, not tiny adults burdened with the knowledge of their family's precarious existence. And something in Anthony's chest ached at the sight. We know about the warehouse job. Rachel continued, her voice gentle but persistent. We know about the eviction notice, the utilities, the car problems. We know about Jillian's asthma and John's shoes. Anthony stiffened. How could they possibly know these details? Been stalking me. His voice came out harsher than intended. Tanya laughed. Hardly needed to, brother. You're not exactly hiding your situation well. The cashier told us about the $10. Your boss told us you're always on the edge of losing your job because you have to take time off for your kids. Your landlord was very informative once we explained who we were asking for. So what now? Anthony's defenses rose. You throw me a party, embarrass me in front of my kids, then what charity pity I don't need. This isn't charity. Rachel's voice cut through his rising anger. This is family. This is how we operate. One of us needs help, we all step up. No questions, no hesitation, no repayment expected, just like you did for me. Anthony fell silent, unable to formulate a response that wouldn't sound ungrateful or proud beyond reason. Across the room, he heard Jillian laugh, a free, unrestrained sound he hadn't heard in months. Tanya leaned forward, her expression serious. I'm going to make this very simple, Anthony Miller. I own McCrae Construction. You have construction experience, correct? Your old boss says you were the best carpenter on his crew before they went under. Anthony nodded cautiously, wondering where this was heading. Good, I need a new foreman. Last one retired. Job pays $60,000 a year to start. Full benefits that kick in immediately. Company truck. We promote from within. Job's yours if you want it. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Anthony gripped the edge of the table, certain he had misheard. That's not possible. You don't even know me. I know all I need to know. Rachel reached out her hand, covering his. I know you spent your last $10 on a stranger. I know you're raising those beautiful children alone. I know you have skills we need. The rest is details. Anthony shook his head, still unable to process the offer. You can't just... This isn't how things work. People don't just hand out jobs like that. In your world, maybe. Tanya smiled, but there was steel beneath it. In our world, in the Steel Roses world, this is exactly how things work. We take care of our own. And brother, like it or not, you're one of us now. Before Anthony could respond, a commotion at the door drew everyone's attention. More women were entering, these laden with boxes and bags. They streamed past Anthony toward the apartment kitchen area, depositing their burdens on empty tables. Groceries, Anthony realized. Not just basics, but fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, gallons of milk, juice boxes. Things he could never afford to keep stocked at home. But that wasn't all. Another group arrived with bags from Target and Walmart. Children's clothes with tags still on, school supplies, toys, and two women carried in bicycles, a blue one and a purple one, exactly the right size for 7-year-olds. That's not, I can't, Anthony started, overwhelmed by the display. Yes, you can. Tanya's voice brooked no argument. Rachel was right. You're family now, and family takes care of family. As if on cue, another woman approached this one in formal business attire despite her steel roses vest. She handed Anthony an envelope. His name was written on the front in elegant script. With trembling fingers, Anthony opened it. Cash. More cash than he'd seen in years. He counted it twice, unable to believe it. $20,000. That's not charity, Tanya said before Anthony could protest. That's an investment in our new foreman. Consider it a signing bonus. Anthony's vision blurred. Across the room, he could see John trying out his new shoes, proper athletic shoes with actual laces, not a piece of duct tape in sight. Jillian was showing her new coloring books to another little girl, her face alight with joy. Daddy, why are you crying? Jillian had appeared at his side, concern in her young eyes. Anthony hadn't realized tears were streaming down his face until she spoke. Have you ever witnessed a miracle? Have you ever seen someone's entire life change in a single moment? That's what was happening here in this warehouse filled with leather-clad women who had somehow decided that Anthony Miller and his children were worth saving, worth investing in, worth bringing into their family. I'm just happy, Princess. Anthony managed pulling Jillian into a hug. These are happy tears. Over Jillian's shoulder, his eyes met Tanya's. The big woman nodded once, a gesture that somehow contained both acknowledgement of what he was feeling and a promise that this was only the beginning. For the first time in 2 years since he'd lost everything, Anthony felt something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Real, tangible hope. The warehouse had transformed by the time the last steel rose departed. What began as a cautious meeting had evolved into something Anthony couldn't quite name, something between a celebration and an initiation. The twins had fallen asleep in a makeshift play area surrounded by toys they'd never dreamed of owning, their faces peaceful in a way Anthony hadn't seen in months. The piles of groceries, clothing, and household supplies had been transported to their apartment by an efficient team of leather-clad women who'd somehow managed to restock their refrigerator, fix the leaking faucet, and reinforce the wobbly kitchen table in under 30 minutes. You start Monday. Tanya's words weren't a question, but a statement of fact as she handed Anthony the keys to a company truck, a gleaming Ford F-150 that still smelled of factory newness. Anthony stared at the keys in his palm, the weight of them unfamiliar, yet somehow right. He'd driven work trucks before, but never one this new, never one assigned specifically to him. The weekend passed in a blur of disbelief. Anthony kept expecting to wake up to find himself back on the pull-out couch with 22 cents in his pocket and an eviction notice in his drawer. But Saturday morning brought John and Jillian bouncing on his bed at dawn, eager to ride their new bicycles. Saturday afternoon brought Rachel and Grace Patterson to their door with more supplies, proper tools for household repairs, a real toolkit that wasn't cobbled together from garage sales and discarded implements. Saturday evening brought a visit from a doctor, a steel rose who specialized in pediatric pulmonology and who examined Jillian's lungs with professional efficiency before leaving behind 3 months' worth of prescription inhalers and a nebulizer machine Anthony could never have afforded. By Sunday night, Anthony still hadn't fully processed the transformation. The apartment remained the same size, in the same building, with the same water stain on the ceiling and the same crack in the bathroom tile. But now the refrigerator hummed with fullness. Now the twins had proper beds with matching comforters instead of the salvaged bunk frames with mismatched bedding. Now his wallet contained more cash than he'd seen in years, and his phone held the numbers of a dozen women who'd sworn to answer any call day or night if he or the children needed anything at all. This isn't real, Anthony whispered to himself as he stood in the newly organized living room after the twins had gone to bed. Things like this don't happen. But Monday morning arrived with all the solidity of the sunrise. Anthony woke before his alarm, his body tense with anticipation and fear. The new position at McRae Construction represented more than a paycheck. It was a lifeline, a chance to provide for his children without the constant terror of insufficiency. But what if he failed? What if his skills had rusted during the months of warehouse work? What if the other employees resented him, this outsider who'd been given a position of authority without earning it through the ranks? Daddy, are you taking us to school in the new truck? John's voice broke through Anthony's spiral of doubt. The boy stood in the doorway, already dressed in new clothes, his face shining with excitement. Even his posture had changed, shoulders straighter, chin higher, as if the simple act of having unbroken shoes had realigned his spine. Anthony forced a smile, swallowing his anxiety. You bet, buddy. You and Jillian are riding in style today. The truck handled like a dream compared to the wheezing Civic. The twins sat buckled in the back seat, marveling at the leather interior and the Bluetooth stereo that played their favorite songs with crystal clarity. At the school drop-off lane, Anthony noticed other parents noticing them the shiny new vehicle, the well-dressed children, the parent prosperity that hadn't been there on Friday. Ms. Parker did a double take as John and Jillian bounded out of the truck, their new backpacks bouncing. Mr. Miller. Her voice held a question she was too polite to articulate. Anthony offered a small nod but no explanation. Some stories were too complex for the morning drop-off line. The McRae construction headquarters occupied the same warehouse he'd visited Saturday night, though the party atmosphere had been replaced by the focused energy of a busy workday. Pickup trucks lined the employee lot, most bearing the company logo. Anthony parked in the space marked with his name, Miller Foreman, and sat for a moment gathering his courage. Through the windshield, he could see workers arriving, hard hats in hand, travel mugs of coffee steaming in the cool morning air. His people now, at least in theory. The main office smelled of coffee and blueprint paper. A receptionist looked up as Anthony entered, her steel roses tattoo partially visible beneath the sleeve of her professional blouse. "Mr. Miller, we've been expecting you," Ms. McRae said to send you right in when you arrived. Tanya's office reflected her dual nature, part biker, part businesswoman. Motorcycle memorabilia shared space with construction awards and professional certificates. A detailed model of the Steel Roses clubhouse occupied a place of honor on a side table, while framed photographs of completed construction projects lined the walls. The woman herself sat behind a substantial desk reviewing documents with the focused intensity Anthony recognized from their first meeting. Right on time. She glanced up, gesturing to the chair across from her. Anthony sat feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't charity or pity. This was business, and Tanya McRae clearly took her business seriously. "Let's get the paperwork out of the way first." She pushed a folder across the desk. "Employment contract benefits, package tax forms, direct deposit authorization. Our HR director will walk you through the details after we talk. I want to be clear about expectations." Anthony nodded, relieved that this meeting had structure, that it followed normal business protocols rather than the chaotic generosity of Saturday night. Tanya leaned back in her chair, studying him with those penetrating eyes. "I didn't hire you because you saved my sister. I hired you because I need a good foreman, and your references say you're excellent with your hands and your head. The fact that you stepped up when no one else would tells me you have integrity, and that's something I value more than experience or skills. Skills can be taught. Integrity comes standard or not at all." The frankness was reassuring. Anthony straightened in his chair, professionalism settling over him like a familiar coat. "I appreciate the opportunity. I won't let you down." Tanya's smile was brief but genuine. "The Westridge project is your first assignment. Mixed-use development, affordable housing units above retail spaces. We're 3 weeks behind schedule and the client is getting antsy. Previous foreman retired mid-project and things have slipped. I need you to get it back on track." She handed him a tablet, the screen displaying detailed plans for the development. 20 units, commercial spaces, below community garden on the roof. It was exactly the kind of project Anthony had always found meaningful, practical spaces for people who needed them, not luxury condos for the wealthy. "Your crew is waiting at the site. I've told them you're coming, but I'll be straight with you. They may not roll out the welcome wagon." They were expecting the assistant foreman to be promoted. "Good man, but not ready for the responsibility. You'll need to prove yourself." Anthony felt a flutter of anxiety, but pushed it down. Proving himself was familiar territory. He'd been doing it his entire working life, the young Hispanic carpenter who had to demonstrate his skills twice over to be taken seriously. The job site buzzed with activity when Anthony arrived. Workers in hard hats moved purposefully among steel beams and concrete forms, the skeletal beginnings of the building rising 3 stories against the sky. He parked his truck, immediately conspicuous with its unmarked newness among the battered work vehicles, and stepped out, tablet in hand, site plans committed to memory. A cluster of men near the supply trailer watched his approach, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. One stepped forward, a muscled man in his 40s with a salt and pepper beard and eyes that had seen their share of challenges. "You, Miller." Anthony extended his hand. "That's right, Anthony Miller. Tanya asked me to take over as foreman." The man looked at the offered hand but didn't take it. "Ray Donovan, been assistant foreman here for 7 years. Expected the promotion myself when Jeff retired. Most of the guys did too. The message was clear. Anthony was an outsider, an interloper who had skipped the line. He kept his hand extended, meeting Ray's gaze without flinching. I understand. You know the crew, the project, the client. I'd be an idiot not to rely on your experience. I'm not here to replace anyone except Jeff. I'm here to get this project back on schedule, which benefits everyone. After a tense moment, Ray accepted the handshake, his grip firm to the point of challenge. They call you Tank's charity case. Word travels fast in this company. Says you're some kind of hero who saved her sister. The whispers around the site grew more audible. Charity case. That's what they saw, not a skilled carpenter with management experience, but a recipient of the boss's goodwill. Anthony felt heat rise in his neck, but kept his expression neutral. I helped someone in trouble. Would have done the same for anyone. But I'm here because I know construction, not because I know SEEP. Ray's expression remained skeptical, but something in Anthony's direct response seemed to register. Well, hero, the east wall formwork is off by 2 inches. The concrete pour is scheduled for tomorrow, and the rebar shipment is delayed. What's your play? It was a test, and Anthony recognized it instantly. Show me. The response was automatic, confident. He'd faced these kinds of challenges before, had solved similar problems with limited resources and impossible deadlines. For the next hour, Anthony toured the site with Ray, listening more than talking, asking questions that demonstrated his knowledge without challenging the assistant foreman's authority. The problem with the formwork became apparent quickly, an error in the blueprints that hadn't been caught before implementation. The rebar delay was trickier, a supply chain issue that threatened the entire timeline. We can reconfigure the pour schedule. Anthony traced a pattern on the site plan. Do the west section first use the time to fix the formwork issues on the east wall, and I know a supplier in Henderson who might have the rebar we need. Former client of mine owes me a favor. Ray's expression shifted subtly, not quite approval, but a reluctant acknowledgement of competence. Your call, boss, but Henderson's a 2-hour drive and we'd need that rebar by morning. Anthony checked his watch. If I leave now, I can be back by sundown. Get the team started on reconfiguring the west section. I'll call ahead to Henderson, make sure the materials are ready when I arrive. The drive to Henderson ate most of the afternoon, but Anthony didn't mind. The solitude gave him space to think, to process the whirlwind changes of the past 72 hours. The new truck handled beautifully, its powerful engine eating up the highway miles. The radio played softly, not the staticky AM stations that were all the Civic's ancient system could receive, but clear digital sound from a satellite service Anthony had never been able to afford. His phone rang through the truck's speakers, the caller ID displaying Ms. Parker's name. Anthony's heart rate spiked immediately. Calls from school usually meant problems. Mr. Miller, I'm calling about Jillian. She had some trouble breathing during PE today. The familiar panic rose, but this time Anthony realized it was accompanied by something new: options. Is she all right? Do I need to come get her? She's fine now. We used her new inhaler and it worked beautifully. She's back in class. I just wanted you to know, and also to say. Ms. Parker hesitated. Whatever changes have happened in your lives, they seem to be positive ones. Jillian mentioned something about motorcycles and a new family. Anthony smiled despite his concern. It's a long story, Ms. Parker, but yes, we've had some good fortune recently. New job, new opportunities. Tell Jillian I'll pick them up at the usual time, and we'll talk about what happened. The Henderson supplier came through loading Anthony's truck with the needed rebar just before closing time. As he secured the load for transport, his phone rang again, this time showing Tanya's number. How's it going, hero? Her gravelly voice held a note of genuine interest. Getting there. Crew's skeptical, especially Ray, but we're working through it. Got the rebar situation handled. Should be back on schedule by end of week if everything goes according to plan. Tanya's laugh was a short bark. Things never go according to plan. That's why we need good people to improvise. Listen, Rachel's asking about the kids. She's still recovering, but she wants to know if they'd be up for Sunday dinner at her place. Nothing fancy, just family. Family. The word still felt foreign when applied to the Steel Roses, this group of leather-clad women who'd adopted his small, broken family with such sudden and complete commitment. Anthony found himself nodding as if Tanya could see him. I think they'd like that. They haven't stopped talking about the motorcycles since Saturday. Good. Kids need adventures. Need to see different walks of life. Rachel will text you the details. And Miller, those men will come around once they see what you can do. Just keep showing up and proving yourself. It's what we all do every damn day. The return drive stretched later than Anthony had planned. By the time he reached the after-school program, he was 15 minutes past pickup time, racing through the doors with apologies ready. To his surprise, the twins weren't waiting alone. They sat at a table with a woman in a Steel Roses vest, Sarah Savage Williams, the heavily tattooed biker who'd connected with Jillian over princess drawings. Uncle Anthony Sarah's voice carried across the room, drawing stares from other parents. She'd explained during Saturday's gathering that all Steel Roses members were aunties to the children of their brothers and sisters, blood relation or not. Sorry to crash pickup, but Tanya mentioned you were running late on a supply run. Thought the Munchkins might like some company. Ms. Winters, normally so rigid about punctuality and payment schedules, hovered nearby with an expression Anthony couldn't quite decipher, something between curiosity and caution. Your friend offered to wait with the children. She showed ID, and the children clearly knew her, so Anthony nodded gratefully. Thank you, Ms. Winters. And thank you, Sarah. First day logistics. Had to make a supply run to Henderson. Sarah waved away the thanks, high-fiving each twin as they gathered their backpacks. All family remember, besides, gave me a chance to hear about Jillian's art project and John's math test. Sounds like you two are crushing it at school. The twins beamed under the attention, their earlier reluctance around the intimidating bikers completely evaporated. John tugged at Sarah's vest. Did you ride your motorcycle here? Can we see it? It's outside. Sarah winked at Anthony. Just for looking, not for riding, not until you're older and your dad says it's okay. Anthony felt a complex emotion as he watched his children excitedly follow Sarah to the parking lot, gratitude mixed with a lingering sense of disorientation. These women, these Steel Roses, had swept into their lives like a benevolent hurricane, rearranging everything in their path. The support was overwhelming, but part of him still waited for the catch, the hidden cost that would eventually come due. The dinner hour approached by the time they arrived home. Anthony expected to face the usual challenge of preparing a meal while helping with homework and addressing the day's minor crises. Instead, they opened the apartment door to find dinner waiting, a still warm casserole on the counter with a note. First days are hard. Don't worry about cooking. GP. Grace Patterson, Rachel's wife, had apparently let herself in how Anthony wasn't certain to ensure they'd have one less thing to worry about. Dad, are we rich now? John's question came during dinner, his fork paused halfway to his mouth. Anthony nearly choked on his water. The question caught him completely off guard, both its directness and its complexity. No, buddy, we're not rich. We have help now. Friends who care about us. Anthony struggled to explain the situation in terms a 7-year-old could understand when he himself was still processing it. Jillian tilted her head, considering this. Like a family, the ladies on the motorcycle said we're their family now, that they're our aunties. But they're not really our aunties, right? Like mommy's not really our mommy anymore. The innocent question pierced Anthony's heart. Their mother Lisa had left when the twins were 3, unable to handle the financial stress and the constant struggle. Her occasional birthday cards and rare phone calls hardly constituted motherhood. But how could he explain abandonment to children who still sometimes cried for her at night? Your mom will always be your mom, Anthony said carefully. But families can be bigger than just people who are related by blood. Sometimes family is the people who show up when you need them, who take care of you because they want to, not because they have to. Like you take care of us. John's simple statement carried the weight of absolute trust, a faith in his father that Anthony had always feared was misplaced during their years of struggle. You show up even when it's hard. Always, buddy, no matter what. Anthony blinked back unexpected tears. Now who wants to help with dishes? The evening routine flowed more easily than it had in years. Homework at the newly reinforced table, baths with hot water that didn't suddenly run cold, bedtime stories in proper beds with proper lighting, not flashlights when the electricity had been cut off. As Anthony tucked them in, he found himself wondering if this was how normal families felt, secure, provided for, unburdened by constant scarcity. Morning brought a text message that shattered the fragile new normalcy. A number Anthony hadn't seen in years, but had never deleted. Lisa. Heard you got a new job. Got a new truck. Neighbors saw. We need to talk about the kids. 4 years of near silence, broken only by occasional birthday cards and twice-yearly phone calls that left the twins confused and emotional. 4 years during which Anthony had struggled alone, had built a life for his children from the scraps of opportunity he could cobble together. Now suddenly, Lisa wanted to talk about the kids. The message haunted him throughout his second day at McRae Construction. Despite his focus on the project, the successful delivery of rebar had earned him grudging respect from Ray and the crew. His mind kept returning to those 11 words. Their implications twisted in his stomach like a knife. He found Tanya in her office during lunch break, the question bursting from him without preamble. Their mother texted, "Wants to talk about the kids. After 4 years of nothing. What do I do?" Tanya set down her sandwich, her expression shifting from surprise to something harder, more protective. "You have full custody, yes." She left when they were 3, signed over rights but maintained visitation. Used it maybe 3 times in the first year, then nothing except cards and occasional calls. Anthony paced the small office, unable to contain his agitation. "Why now? What does she want?" "Money." Tanya's response was immediate and certain. "She heard you've got some now. Heard about the job, the truck. Probably thinks there's cash to be had, child support to claim, something to gain." The assessment aligned with Anthony's own fears. Lisa had always been practical about finances, had left precisely because there weren't enough resources to sustain them all. If she believed the situation had changed, "We need to get ahead of this." Tanya pulled out her phone. "My sister-in-law's a family law attorney, specializes in father's rights. She'll want to review your custody agreement, make sure everything's airtight." Anthony's head spun. He'd come seeking advice, perhaps reassurance, not an immediate leap to legal defenses. "Isn't that a bit extreme?" "She just wants to talk." Tanya fixed him with a level gaze. When people show up after years of absence, right when your finances improve, they're not usually bringing good news. Better to be prepared and not need it than get blindsided. The kids have stability now. We protect that at all costs. The conversation with Tanya left Anthony unsettled, yet he couldn't dismiss her concerns. He'd witnessed similar scenarios play out among friends and coworkers, absent parents returning when circumstances improved, disrupting lives and reopening old wounds. The thought of the twins facing that kind of upheaval just when things were finally looking up was unbearable. He texted Lisa back during his afternoon break. "The kids are doing well. School is good. Health is good." "What specifically do you want to discuss?" Her response came almost immediately. "I want to see them. It's been too long. I've got my life together now. Apartment in Henderson. Steady job as a dental hygienist. They should know their mother." Anthony stared at the message, emotions warring within him. Lisa had rights, legal and moral. She was their mother, regardless of her absence. The twins sometimes asked about her, kept her infrequent cards in special boxes beside their beds. But they were finally thriving, finally free from the constant anxiety that had shadowed their early years. Could he risk their newfound stability? "Let me talk to them first. See how they feel. Maybe we can arrange something for the weekend." His thumbs hovered over the screen, hesitating before adding, "They've been through a lot, Lisa. They're just starting to feel secure." The 3 dots of her typing appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Fine. Saturday, neutral location, just a few hours. I'm not trying to disrupt their lives, Anthony. I just want to know my children." Anthony put the phone away, unable to process the complexities of the situation while supervising a concrete pour. The worksite demanded his full attention, and in some ways he was grateful for the distraction. Physical labor had always helped clear his mind, and the challenges of construction management required a focus that temporarily displaced personal worries. By day's end, the pour was complete, the formwork issue resolved, and the project timeline back on track. Ray approached as Anthony was completing the daily site report, his earlier hostility somewhat tempered. "Didn't think we'd make it happen today. You called it right with the schedule adjustment." Coming from Ray, it was high praise indeed. Anthony nodded, accepting the olive branch for what it was. "Team effort. Your crew knows what they're doing, just needed a clear direction." Ray studied him for a moment, curiosity replacing some of the suspicion. "How'd you get mixed up with the Steel Roses anyway?" "Not exactly your typical motorcycle club affiliates." The question opened a door Anthony had been anticipating. The crew had clearly heard rumors, but none had asked directly until now. "I helped one of their members, Rachel Patterson." Medical emergency at a gas station. Didn't know she was still Roses until after. They took an interest in my situation. Still Roses take care of their own. Ray's comment held new understanding. My cousin's husband is a Rose brother, what they call the men associated with members. Good people underneath all that leather. Fierce as hell if you cross them, but loyal to the bone, Anthony smiled slightly. I'm learning that. Ray hesitated, then offered his hand again, this time without the challenging grip. Welcome to McCrae Miller. Guess if Tank vouches for you, that's good enough for us. Just don't expect special treatment because you're her pet project. The mild insult couldn't diminish the significance of the moment acceptance, however grudging from the man whose approval mattered most for Anthony's success at the site. He shook Ray's hand firmly. Wouldn't dream of it. Only special treatment I want is a paycheck for honest work. The rest of the week passed in a blur of activity. By day, Anthony established his authority at the work site, earning respect through competence and hard work rather than his connection to Tanya. By evening, he navigated the strange new reality of his home life. Refrigerator, full bills paid, children thriving, and a network of intimidating women checking in regularly to ensure the family's needs were met. Friday brought the first truly difficult conversation with the twins. After dinner, homemade this time with actual fresh ingredients, Anthony gathered them in the living room. I need to talk to you both about something important. Your mom texted me. She wants to see you tomorrow. The children's reactions couldn't have been more different. Jillian's eyes widened, a mix of excitement and uncertainty crossing her face. John's expression immediately closed, his body tensing as if preparing for a blow. Both responses broke Anthony's heart for different reasons. Mommy's coming here? Jillian clutched her stuffed elephant, her mother's last gift, tighter to her chest. Will she stay? No, princess. Just a visit. Maybe lunch at the park or something. Anthony kept his voice gentle, watching both children carefully for signs of distress. You don't have to go if you don't want to. John's voice was small but determined. Why does she want to see us now? She didn't care before. The directness of the question struck Anthony like a physical blow. At 7, John had already developed the emotional awareness to recognize the pattern of abandonment, to question the sudden reappearance. People's lives change, buddy. Maybe she's in a better place now, able to be more involved. Because we have money now. John's assessment echoed Tanya's with unsettling accuracy. Because we have a nice truck and new clothes. She thinks we're rich, out of the mouths of babes. Anthony struggled to find a response that was honest, yet age-appropriate. Your mom texting has nothing to do with our situation. She's your mother and she loves you in her own way. She wants to reconnect, but it's your choice whether you want to see her or not. Both of you get to decide for yourselves. Jillian looked to her brother, their twin bond communicating something beyond words. John sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly. I'll go if Jilly wants to, but I don't want to call her mom anymore. She's not like you. She doesn't show up. The simple statement crystallized the fundamental truth of their family's journey through poverty, through struggle, through the sudden intervention of strangers who'd become more reliable than blood. Anthony had shown up day after day, year after year, creating stability from chaos, security from scarcity. And now other people were showing up too, creating a network of support where before there had been only isolation. You don't have to call her anything you're not comfortable with. Anthony pulled both children into a hug, feeling their small bodies relax against him. Remember what I told you, family is the people who show up, like the motorcycle ladies. Jillian's voice was muffled against his chest. They show up. Anthony smiled into his daughter's hair. Yes, princess, like the motorcycle ladies. Saturday dawned clear and crisp, a perfect October day. Anthony had arranged to meet Lisa at a park halfway between their homes' neutral territory, where the children could retreat to playground equipment if the conversation became uncomfortable. He dressed the twins in regular clothes, deliberately bypassing the new outfits from Steel Roses. This meeting wasn't about showing off their improved circumstances. It was about reconnection on honest terms. They arrived early, giving the children time to play before Lisa appeared. Anthony watched them on the swings, their laughter carrying across the park, and felt a surge of protectiveness, so fierce it almost took his breath away. They'd weathered so much in their short lives, had demonstrated resilience beyond their years. Whatever happened today, he would ensure they remained as unscathed as possible. A sedan pulled into the parking lot, not new but well-maintained. Lisa emerged looking both familiar and strange. 4 years had changed her hair shorter, figure, slimmer clothing, more professional than the casual wear she preferred during their marriage. She scanned the park, spotting Anthony first, then the children on the swings. Her face softened vulnerability, replacing the confident mask she'd worn upon arrival. Anthony steeled himself as she approached, determined to keep this interaction civil, regardless of his personal feelings. Her abandonment had nearly destroyed him, had forced him to become both mother and father overnight, while working multiple jobs and grieving the loss of his partner. But this meeting wasn't about his pain or his forgiveness. It was about the twins and what they needed. The children noticed her approach, their swinging, slowing to a stop. John's face hardened into a carefully neutral mask, while Jillian clutched the chains of her swing tighter. Uncertainty written across her features. This moment of reconnection, so long awaited by some and dreaded by others, hung suspended in the autumn air, fragile as a soap bubble, and just as likely to burst at the slightest pressure. Lisa took a hesitant step forward, uncertainty replacing the confident stride that had carried her across the park. The twins remained frozen by the swings, neither running toward her nor retreating. John's small hand found Jillian's, their fingers intertwining in silent solidarity. "Hi, babies. It's been so long." Lisa's voice cracked with emotion, hands half raised as if unsure whether to offer a hug. "You've gotten so big." The moment stretched painfully as neither child moved. Anthony recognized the paralysis of confusion, the conflict between biological connection and emotional reality. These children barely knew the woman standing before them, yet she occupied an outsized space in their understanding of themselves. Jillian broke first, her natural empathy overcoming caution. She released John's hand and took 3 careful steps forward. "You look different. Your hair is short now." Lisa touched her chin-length bob self-consciously. "I changed it last year. Do you like it?" John remained rooted beside the swing, eyes darting between his sister and the woman who had given birth to him. A muscle twitched in his jaw, so like Anthony's own expression when controlling powerful emotions, that it created an ache in his chest. The conversation that followed unfolded with excruciating awkwardness. They migrated to a picnic table where Lisa attempted to bridge 4 years of absence with questions about school friends and hobbies. Jillian responded with cautious animation while John offered monosyllabic answers, his eyes rarely meeting Lisa's. Anthony observed silently, intervening only when necessary, determined to let his children navigate this reunion on their own terms. He noted the way Lisa's attention lingered on their new sneakers, their quality clothing, subtle assessments of the family's changed circumstances. An hour into the visit, as the children grew restless, Lisa turned her attention more directly to Anthony. "I'd like to have them for a weekend. My apartment has a second bedroom all set up, just to reconnect, to establish some normalcy. 4 years of nothing, and now you want normalcy." Anthony kept his voice low, mindful of the children now exploring a nearby playscape. "They're just getting settled after everything that's happened. A few hours in a park is one thing. A weekend is something else entirely." Lisa's expression hardened, the vulnerability of earlier moments replaced by something more calculating. "I'm their mother, Anthony. I have rights. Legal rights. I've been talking to a lawyer about modifying our arrangement now that both our situations have changed." The threat hung in the air between them. Anthony felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Remembering Tanya's warnings, "So that's what this is about. You heard things are better for us financially, and now you want back in. That's not fair." Lisa's voice rose slightly before she caught herself glancing toward the children. "I've been getting my life together, working through some things. I'm stable now with a good bow and a nice place. I want to be part of their lives again." Anthony studied her face, searching for the woman he had once loved, the mother who had once crooned lullabies and checked for monsters under beds. "Where were you when Jillian ended up in the ER because we couldn't afford her asthma medication? Where were you when John cried himself to sleep because kids were making fun of his taped-up shoes? Where were you during all the birthdays and Christmases and school programs when they looked for your face in the audience?" Lisa flinched as if struck. "I couldn't handle it, Anthony. The constant struggling, never having enough. It was destroying me. I had to get myself right before I could be any good to them. But I'm ready now. I'm healthy. I'm stable." Anthony wanted to lash out, to unleash 4 years of solitary parenting of explaining to crying children why their mother didn't call on their birthday, of working 3 jobs while battling his own exhaustion and despair. Instead, he looked toward the playscape where John and Jillian now navigated the monkey bars, their small faces intent with concentration. They deserve better than adult bitterness poisoning their reunion. Let's take it slow. Anthony finally said, each word measured. 1 Saturday a month, supervised visits. If that goes well, maybe we build to more. But this isn't about what you want or what I want. It's about what's best for them. Lisa opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again, seeming to recognize the reasonableness of his position. Her eyes drifted back to the children, a complex emotion crossing her features. They have your resilience. I always envied that about you, how you could take whatever life threw at you and keep going. I just crumbled. The admission held a raw honesty that caught Anthony off guard. For years, he had cast Lisa as the villain in their story, the woman who abandoned her family when they needed her most. But sitting across from her now, he glimpsed something else, a person who had broken under pressures similar to those he had weathered, someone who had made a different choice in the face of the same impossible circumstances. They need consistency more than anything. Anthony's voice gentled slightly. They're just starting to believe that good things can last, that stability isn't temporary. I can't let anything threaten that, not even their mother. Lisa nodded slowly, acceptance replacing defensiveness. 1 Saturday a month supervised. I can work with that for now. And Anthony, I really am glad things are better for you all. However it happened. The remainder of the visit passed more easily, the clear boundaries creating a framework within which everyone could operate. When the time came to leave, Jillian offered a shy hug, while John managed a high-five, minimal contact, but a significant concession from a child whose hurt ran deep. Watching Lisa's car disappear from the parking lot, Anthony felt a complex mixture of emotions: relief that the meeting hadn't devolved into conflict, concern about her legal threats, and a strange, unexpected sympathy for the woman who had once shared his life and still shared his children. Back at the apartment, John finally voiced what had clearly been simmering all day. Is she going to try to take us away from you? The directness of the question struck Anthony like physical impact. John at 7 possessed a perceptiveness that sometimes bordered on painful, an ability to discern adult undercurrents that Anthony wished he could shield him from for just a little longer. Nobody is taking you anywhere. You and Jillian are staying right here with me. But she's our mom. Jillian's voice was small, uncertain. In stories, kids always live with their moms. Anthony gathered them both close, feeling their small bodies against his, growing so fast yet still so vulnerable. Some families look different than the ones in stories. Our family is special. It's you and me and all our new friends who care about us. Your mom can be part of that too, but in a different way. The most important thing is that you two are safe and happy and loved. That's what a real family does: keeps you safe and makes sure you're happy and reminds you every day how loved you are. The children seemed satisfied with this explanation, but that night Anthony called Tanya's sister-in-law, the family law attorney. The conversation was brief but reassuring. His custody agreement was solid, Lisa's years of minimal contact well documented. A judge might grant increased visitation if she demonstrated consistent interest over time, but a radical change in custody arrangement was highly unlikely. Some of the anxiety loosened its grip on Anthony's chest, but a residual uneasiness remained. Lisa's reappearance had shaken something in the foundation he'd been building, a reminder that the past could intrude on their present at any moment. Sunday dinner at Rachel Patterson's home provided a welcome distraction. The Steel Rose's treasurer had recovered remarkably from her cardiac event, though she moved more slowly and tired easily. Her home, a sprawling ranch-style house on 2 acres outside the city limits, reflected both her biker aesthetic and middle-class comfort. Motorcycle memorabilia shared space with family photos and comfortable furniture. Grace Patterson proved to be an exceptional cook, serving a roast that reminded Anthony of childhood Sunday dinners at his grandmother's table. Other Steel Rose's members and their families filled the house, women of all ages, their partners, children running in and out. The atmosphere was more family reunion than motorcycle club, gathering with conversations flowing easily from construction projects to children's school achievements to motorcycle maintenance. Anthony watched in amazement as John and Jillian integrated seamlessly into this unconventional community. Jillian had attached herself to Sarah Savage Williams, the tattooed biker with a surprising talent for braiding hair, and telling princess stories with unexpected feminist twists. John had found a mentor in Lisa Wrench Rodriguez, a mechanical genius, who patiently explained how engines worked using dessert plates and silverware as teaching aids. You seem 1,000 miles away. Rachel settled into a chair beside Anthony, her recovery evident in her improved color and stronger voice. Everything okay? Anthony hesitated, then decided on honesty. Their mother showed up yesterday, wants to be back in their lives now that things are better for us. Talking about lawyers, custody modifications. Rachel's expression darkened. Ah, the return of the fair-weather parent. We've seen that story before. You talked to Meredith, Anthony nodded. Tanya's sister-in-law. She says we're on solid legal ground, but still, it complicates things. The kids are confused, especially Jillian. She wants her mother, but doesn't understand why she left in the first place. Rachel's gaze drifted to where the twins played with the other children, their laughter carrying across the yard. They're resilient. Kids adapt. And they've got something now they didn't have before, a whole community that has their back. That has your back. Anthony felt the truth of her words settle into him like warmth. The Steel Roses had expanded his family exponentially, creating a network of support that cushioned all three of them. Lisa might have legal rights, but she would never have the fierce loyalty of these women who had claimed his children as their own. The Westridge project progressed ahead of schedule under Anthony's supervision. By the 3-month mark, the building had taken definitive shape. Affordable housing units that would provide decent homes for 20 families, commercial spaces that would offer services to an underserved neighborhood, a rooftop garden that would produce fresh vegetables and create community space. Ray Donovan, initially so resistant, had become Anthony's strongest ally on the site. His knowledge of the crew and the local construction landscape proved invaluable, and Anthony made sure Tanya recognized his contributions. The two men developed a working rhythm that balanced Anthony's innovative problem-solving with Ray's practical experience. One Tuesday morning, as Anthony reviewed material deliveries with suppliers, Tanya arrived unexpectedly at the site. She rarely visited ongoing projects, trusting her foreman to handle day-to-day operations. Her presence immediately caught attention, workers straightening unconsciously as she walked the site with practiced eyes. Looking good, Miller. The schedule shows you're 3 days ahead. Cost reports are under budget. Crew morale seems solid. Tanya's assessment was characteristically direct. You've proven yourself faster than I expected. Thank you. Anthony couldn't help the pride that swelled in his chest. The job had become more than employment. It was a chance to create something lasting, to use skills he'd feared might atrophy during his warehouse days. But I couldn't have done it without Ray. His knowledge of the crew and local suppliers has been essential. Tanya nodded, apparently pleased by his willingness to share credit. That's why I'm here, actually. Got another project coming up, state contract, affordable housing development with specialized units for veterans. Bigger than Westridge, higher profile. I want you to lead it with Ray as your right hand. Full project management, not just site supervision. The offer stunned Anthony. Such a promotion typically came after years of proven performance, not mere months. You're trusting me with a government contract. After 3 months, Tanya's expression remained impassive, but her eyes held something like amusement. I trusted you with my sister's life after 3 minutes. 3 months is practically a lifetime in comparison. As the Westridge project neared completion, Anthony found himself increasingly drawn to the idea of specialized construction projects that serve community needs rather than luxury markets. The veterans housing contract awakened something that had lain dormant during his years of survival mode, a vision for the future beyond mere subsistence. He began spending evenings at the kitchen table after the twins were asleep, sketching ideas for construction innovations that would better serve marginalized communities. Adjustable features for aging residents. Enhanced soundproofing for families with children with sensory sensitivities. Communal spaces that encouraged interaction while preserving privacy. Each idea built upon his personal experiences of struggle, transforming hardship into insight. Lisa continued her monthly supervised visits with the twins, gradually rebuilding a relationship that would never be maternal in the traditional sense, but held its own value. John remained cautious, protective of his emotions, while Jillian embraced the chance to know the woman who had given her life. Anthony watched the evolving dynamic with vigilance but increasing acceptance. Lisa had maintained her recovery, kept her promises, shown genuine interest in the children's lives. She would never be the mother they deserved, but perhaps she could be a positive presence nonetheless. The Steel Roses remained a constant in folding the Miller family into their community with unwavering commitment. Sunday dinners at Rachel's became tradition. Steel Roses members attended school functions, taught the twins skills ranging from basic motorcycle maintenance to advanced mathematics, provided backup childcare when work kept Anthony late. The support was practical, emotional, and unconditional family in the truest sense. 6 months after that fateful night at the gas station, Tanya called Anthony into her office. Her expression was uncharacteristically hesitant as she pushed a folder across her desk. "I've been watching you, Miller. Not just your work, your vision. Those designs you've been developing for the Veterans Project show something special. You're not just building structures, you're solving problems most contractors don't even recognize." Anthony accepted the folder cautiously, uncertain where the conversation was heading. Inside, he found paperwork from the State Construction Board. "Mr. Miller, this is the State Construction Board. McCray Construction has recommended you for the Minority Business Development Program. We'd like to help you start your own construction company." Anthony stared at the document, unable to process its implications. "My own company? That's years down the road. I don't have the capital, the client base. The Steel Roses MC has offered to be your first major contract for their new community center." Tanya interrupted, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "And I'd be happy to serve as minority investor." Ray's expressed interest as well. "You'd maintain controlling interest, of course." Anthony's mind raced possibilities, expanding beyond anything he'd dared imagine. 3 months ago, he'd been lifting boxes in a warehouse, stretching $10 to feed his children. Now he was being offered his own company, backed by people who believed in his ability to create something meaningful. Why, the question escaped before he could contain it, the same question he'd asked that night as Rachel gasped for breath in a gas station parking lot. Tanya's answer echoed Rachel's from the hospital. "Because you remind us who we really are. Not the stereotype, not the fear. We're builders, Anthony, every one of us. Some build motorcycles, some build businesses, some build communities. You build homes, not just structures, but actual homes where people can thrive. The world needs more of that." The decision to launch Miller Family Construction required courage Anthony hadn't known he possessed. The security of his position at McCray Construction beckoned regular paycheck benefits, stability for his children. Entrepreneurship offered no guarantees, only possibility and risk in equal measure. The twins provided unexpected clarity. At dinner one night, and as Anthony cautiously explained the opportunity, weighing pros and cons, aloud, John interrupted with 7-year-old directness. "But Dad, you always tell us to be brave and try hard things." Jillian nodded solemnly in agreement. "You said the most important things are usually the scariest first, like when I had to use the big slide at school." Anthony laughed, recognizing his own wisdom reflected back at him through the simplicity of childhood understanding. "You're right, Princess. I did say that." The paperwork to establish Miller Family Construction took 6 weeks to complete. Tanya's connections expedited processes that might otherwise have taken months. Ray Donovan joined as operations manager, bringing his practical experience and crew relationships. Several Steel Roses members with relevant skills signed on: an accountant, a marketing specialist, an architect. The company's foundation was built on the same principle that had transformed Anthony's life: community, lifting each other towards success. The Steel Roses Community Center became their first official project, a renovation of an abandoned warehouse into a multi-purpose facility that would serve local families with daycare, after-school programs, job training, and recreational spaces. The steel beam signing ceremony drew media attention not for the modest project itself, but for the unexpected alliance between a Hispanic-owned construction startup and a women's motorcycle club. Local news cameras captured the moment: Anthony in a hard hat, in safety vests, the twins beside him, with miniature versions of the same Rachel Patterson in her Steel Roses leather, holding the ceremonial marker. The children's faces glowed with pride as they added their signatures to the beam that would support the building's central atrium: John Miller and Jillian Miller, in carefully formed letters. That evening, watching the news report from their new home, a modest 3-bedroom house with a yard where the twins could play safely, Anthony felt a sense of completion unlike anything he'd experienced before. The cycle had broken. The desperate struggle that had defined his existence for so long had transformed into something else entirely. Not mere survival, but flourishing. Flourishing brought its own challenges. The company's rapid growth required constant adaptation. Projects multiplied, each with unique demands and pressures. Anthony found himself working longer hours than he'd anticipated, the freedom of ownership sometimes feeling heavier than employment. The twins noticed. One evening, returning home well after dinner time, Anthony found them already in pajamas homework, complete, ready for bed without his supervision. The sight struck him with unexpected force. They were growing up, becoming more independent each day, and he was missing moments he could never reclaim. "You promised movie night, Dad." John's accusation held no anger. Just stated fact, but it pierced Anthony's heart nonetheless. "You said we'd watch the new superhero one." "I know, buddy." Anthony knelt to his son's level, recognizing the echo of his own childhood disappointments in John's resigned expression. The Garfield project had complications. The supplier delivered the wrong materials, and we had to— He stopped himself, realizing John didn't need excuses. "I'm sorry. I broke my promise, and that was wrong." Jillian joined them, her expression similarly solemn. "Sarah says you're working too hard. She says you're doing the thing where you forget to breathe." Out of the mouths of babes in steel roses. Anthony pulled both children into a hug, feeling the solid reality of them against his chest. The company could wait. Emails could wait. These two small humans who trusted him above all others, this could not. That night, after superhero movies and popcorn, after bedtime stories, and tucking in, Anthony made a decision. Success meant nothing if he became absent in the process. He'd already hired project managers and site supervisors. It was time to delegate more, to trust the team he'd built, to remember that he'd created this company to improve lives, including his own and his children's. The course correction proved transformative. Anthony restructured his schedule, prioritizing time with the twins while maintaining strategic oversight of the company. He established firm boundaries: no work calls during dinner or family outings, no weekend work except genuine emergencies, regular vacations that were actually vacation, not remote working under the guise of leisure. Miller Family Construction continued to thrive despite, or perhaps because of its founders' rebalanced priorities. The company developed a reputation for quality work, ethical practices, and innovative solutions for underserved communities. Each project created ripples beyond its physical structure: jobs for those struggling to find employment, homes for families in need, community spaces that fostered connection. 2 years after that fateful October night, Anthony stood on the rooftop garden of the completed Steel Roses Community Center. Below, children played in a state-of-the-art playground. Inside, classes and programs served hundreds of local families weekly. The center had become exactly what its name implied: a hub of community, a place where people found resources, support, and belonging. Rachel Patterson joined him at the railing. Her health fully restored, though she now moved with the careful deliberation of someone who had glimpsed mortality. She cut back her treasurer duties with Steel Roses, but remained the heart of the organization, her wisdom guiding younger members. "You know what you gave me that night?" Rachel's voice carried over the sounds of children playing below. "A bottle of water and some aspirin." Rachel shook her head, gray eyes distant with memory. "You gave me the chance to see my daughter graduate medical school, to walk her down the aisle, to hold my grandchildren. You gave me years I wouldn't have had. But more than that, you reminded an old soldier that there are still people worth fighting for, still goodness worth protecting. You gave me back my faith in humanity." Anthony thought of that night often, the fear in people's eyes when they saw Rachel's vest, the warnings to walk away, the way his hand had hesitated over that $10 bill, knowing his children needed it. He thought of the 22 cents that had rattled in his pocket as he drove home, wondering how he'd face his children the next morning. He never could have imagined that 22 cents would be all he'd need. That the next morning, instead of scraping together breakfast, he'd be overwhelmed by abundance. That the scary bikers everyone feared would become the family his children had always deserved. That choosing compassion over caution would change everything. The letter from the Citizenship Award hung in his kitchen, but beside it now hung something else, a patch given to him by the Steel Roses. Not a member patch. Anthony had never joined the club officially, but something special they'd created just for him. It showed two hands reaching out, one giving, one receiving, with the words, "Brother by deed, not by blood." Tanya had explained it simply: "You don't need to ride with us to be one of us. You showed us that brotherhood isn't about the patch on your back. It's about what's in your heart." John and Jillian thrived as they approached their 10th birthday. John's natural mechanical aptitude had blossomed under the tutelage of various Steel Roses members. School reports praised his problem-solving abilities and growing confidence. The boy who had once hidden taped shoes beneath his desk now eagerly demonstrated class projects secure in his worth beyond material possessions. Jillian's creativity found expression through art classes sponsored by the community center. Her asthma, properly managed with regular medical care, rarely limited her activities. Teachers noted her unusual empathy, her ability to connect with classmates across social boundaries, a quality Anthony recognized as the legacy of their own journey from isolation to community. Lisa maintained her monthly visits, gradually earning a place in the children's lives as something between an aunt and a friend, not quite mother, but family nonetheless. She'd abandoned her initial legal threats, recognizing the stability and love surrounding the twins in their current arrangement. In an unexpected development, she'd begun volunteering at the community center, using her dental hygienist skills to provide free cleanings for uninsured children. The work seemed to heal something in her, as she found a way to contribute positively to the world John and Jillian inhabited. 5 years after that October night, Anthony sat at his kitchen table watching his now 12-year-old twins do homework. John worked through advanced math problems with focused intensity. Jillian sketched designs for a community garden project her class was implementing at school. Their faces showed none of the pinched anxiety he remembered from earlier years, only the healthy concentration of children, secure in their present and optimistic about their future. On Sunday, they would drive to Rachel's for dinner, where at least a dozen Steel Roses would greet them with the easy familiarity of true family. After dinner, Anthony would help Ray Donovan tune up his motorcycle, while the twins played with the growing number of Steel Roses children, a community within a community, bonds forming that would likely last lifetimes. The $10 Anthony had spent that October night had multiplied beyond imagination. But sitting at his kitchen table, 5 years later, watching his children thrive, listening to them talk about their college dreams that were now actually possible, Anthony knew the real value of that night. It wasn't the money, it wasn't it wasn't even the security. It was the lesson that compassion creates ripples. That one act of kindness, even when it costs everything, can transform not just one life, but dozens. The people he'd hired, the families they supported, the children who now had presents at Christmas because of toy drives, the veterans who found work and purpose through his company, all because one night with $10 in his pocket and 2 kids to feed, Anthony Miller chose to see a human being instead of a stereotype. Each week, Anthony visited the Shell station on Riverside Avenue. He kept $20 in his wallet, 2 tens just for that visit. If he saw someone struggling, someone who looked like they were down to their last dollar, he bought them what they needed. Anthony had learned that when you choose compassion over caution, when you see the human being instead of the stereotype, when you give what you can't afford to lose, that's when miracles happen. That's when 200 bikers show up at your door to change your life forever. Remember, you never know when your $10 might save a life, and you never know when that life might save yours right back.